and news updates online at 560theanswer.com. Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan, and in for Amy J this morning, John Cass.
The lovely John Cass.
You just stepped over me trying to market your product for you. JohnCassNews.com. Now you can call yourself lovely.
I am lovely.
All right. All right, John. So last night, as we've been discussing intermittently all morning, Dana Bash scored that big interview. She got a presidential candidate to talk to the press. Wow.
Can you imagine being selected for that?
It's a high honor, and Dana Bash behaved like it was, minding her P's and Q's. The Bidenomics issue, how things are going there. She sort of gave a long-winded, bizarre answer.
Feelings?
About how she's going to respond to prices being higher for things like groceries and gas and housing.
Without saying the words price control?
But trying to explain what her opportunity economy is going to look like and how it's going to be engendered to get back to where we were, even though I know we're not going back. We're charting a new way forward and all that directional rap. But just on the issue, so after her vamping on the issue of her opportunity economy that she's going to create day one. A simple question. So if Biden's this great president and you guys have done such great work that you're going to build on, then would you call it a success?
She's not doing that anymore.
You maintain Bidenomics is a success.
I maintain that when we do the work of bringing down prescription medication for the American people, including capping the cost of the annual cost of prescription medication for seniors at $2,000, when we do what we did in the first year of being in office to extend the child tax credit so that we cut child poverty in America by over 50%, when we do what we have done to invest in the American people and bringing manufacturing back to the United States so that we created over 800,000 new manufacturing jobs, bringing business back to America. What we have done to improve the supply chain so we're not relying on foreign governments to supply American families with their basic needs, I'll say that that's good work. There's more to do, but that's good work.
So is that a yes? It was a success? Gerard Baker is editor-at-large of the Wall Street Journal, author of American Breakdown, Why We No Longer Trust Our Leaders and Institutions and How We Can Rebuild Our Confidence. Why We No Longer Trust Our Leaders. That interview last night might need to be an appendix. Gerard Baker, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dan and John. Pleasure to be with you.
Were you persuaded about Bidenomics after that defense of it of sorts?
Look, I think obviously not. It was striking that she didn't. That was the one moment I thought where Dana Bash, for a moment, almost had an interesting question and almost an interesting exchange. If she'd followed up, it would have been actually valuable. But as so often throughout the interview, she didn't follow up because it was clear that Harris, as it has become clear in the last month since she's been the nominee, doesn't want to be associated with Bidenomics. She kind of wants to run away from it. She was given an opportunity there to say Bidenomics has been a success. That is, after all, the administration of which she's been a part for the last 4 years. And again, she dodged the question and wasn't really allowed to. Wasn't given, unfortunately, another opportunity to explain what her views are about Bidenomics. Look, Dan, I think the main takeaway, I don't think this was a big deal either way. It's absolutely insane that this, Kamala Harris does an interview becomes a kind of national moment. This is it's like the Super Bowl. It comes once a year and everybody's watching to see whether their team wins. It's just completely ridiculous that we've had to go through this. And I'm guessing now that'll probably be it for at least for maybe the rest of the campaign.
Well,
but,
they have to be exhausted after that 30 minutes. I mean,
yeah, the whole setting was weird too, and I thought having a support animal along, or how people have described some walks, was a bit. It didn't strike me. It didn't look like a support animal. The whole thing looked to me. If you turn the volume down, as I did when I watched it back for part of it, it looked like a couple going along for a marriage counselling. And a little bit, it was like, well, Tim, what do you think? Have you maybe been? What are you going to bring to this? Are you actually going to do anything? And Tim sat there very, hands folded, trying to be nice and sort of. Look, I think I don't think it's going to make a big difference. By the way, I do think it was revealing in this sense, which is that we saw. To me, the most interesting point of the whole thing was that very first question she got when she was asked a question. Which, if you want to be president of the United States, you must have thought about this topic 1,000 times, and you must know what the answer is. She was asked, "What will you do on day one?"
Right.
And she gave this rambling, cliche. I always think she speaks like, I wrote this recently, that she speaks like someone from California in the 1970s who's on their sort of fourth or fifth draw into their bong, and says this weird kind of verbal sort of nonsense, and it was just a series of opportunity economy and helping the middle class, and it's been a decade of tough times and all this kind of. And to me that said so much, because it said she does, and I think this is true of Kamala Harris. She does not have the basic intellectual equipment to understand what it is to be president of the United States and to have a sense of what she wants to do as president of the United States. And that just was in that first question, the only question in a way that really matters. What are you going to do if you're president? She didn't have an answer. She did not have an answer.
Yeah, I mean, it's somebody described it. Just words come out of her mouth in no particular order. The order doesn't matter so much as sort of the vibe, right? Which is what we were treated to.
Well, she doesn't read
during the DNC. It's all the vibe. It's the joy, and somebody is joyful when they constantly tell you how joyful they are.
Yeah. That was the other thing about last night, by the way. It was remarkably lacking in joy. I think it did, again, I'm sorry to sort of labor the point about the kind of marriage counseling session, but it did look like two people who were, who had a problem and were kind of sort of trying to get it resolved. And it looks, I think, interestingly, by the way, I think she's been told to cut the cackle. Because it's funny. We've been told that drawing attention to the cackle is sort of sexist and terrible, and it's just
racist.
a sign of how joyful, how racist too, how joyful she is, and it's wonderful that she laughs like that. But I think her handlers have obviously realised it's a problem. So there was nothing last. I don't think we may have had one little smile and that sort of one weird bit where she started to suggest she was going to tell some really interesting story about the day that Joe Biden announced he was going to resign, and then told us that she was just making bacon for her children. Which, by the way, as a Jewish friend of mine pointed out, that's another question mark about Doug Emhoff there. But I mean, look, that was that she came close to kind of giving a little smile and a little kind of winsome. Little giggle there, but she's cut that out, which I do think is quite telling, because I think they do realize that just makes her look crazy.
And yet, the Wall Street Journal poll out yesterday that she maintains a narrow lead over Trump. I mean, I'm not making too much of it. It's national numbers in a state-by-state campaign. But it's less so the head-to-head, which basically makes the thing a dead heat, certainly within the margin of error, including the battleground states, most of them. But that 84% of those surveyed said they have enough information to formulate a hardened opinion of her, and 49% like her and 49% don't, which is better numbers than Trump. But I mean, really, half the country thinks they have enough information, or they should at this point, and half the country says, yeah, I like what I'm picking up from Kamala Harris.
I mean, look, we don't really have enough information about Kamala Harris. I mean, this is the fundamental reality.
We don't even know if she worked at McDonald's or not, or if she's telling a story like Joe Biden.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to finding out what the truth about that. But she's supposedly. Yeah, the milkshake queen. Look, I mean,
fries,
I
Jerry.
don't know. Sorry?
It was fries.
Oh, I thought it was. Oh, sorry, it was fries. You're right. It was fries. I beg your pardon.
Because those are the easiest.
Look, I think that the fact that we don't know enough about her is exactly the Democrat strategy, right? I mean, that's why that's why, first of all, it's why she's doing relatively well in the polls, because, people, and Dan, you and I have discussed this before, people are not enthusiastic about Donald Trump either. So somebody else comes along who isn't Joe Biden, and it's like, yeah, I'll give this person a chance. But the whole idea of the Democrats is that we don't have information. And we're not going to get information about what she thinks and what she does, because they know that if she was really we'd discover one or two things. If she was really grilled in a proper interview, or maybe Trump will for once be able to do it in a debate, we would learn that she's either essentially basically nothing, that there's nothing there, it's completely vacuous, or deep down maybe somewhere she is that sort of San Francisco progressive that that she used to be until about a month ago, that we've seen so much, that we saw in 2019 and that we saw before that when she was a senator. So, that's the point, that we don't know enough about her, and we're not going to be told anything about her if they can get away with it.
What do we know about CNN? Because I ask you to put yourself in the role of manager, and one of your reporters is being selected to do the friendly Kamala Harris interview. What would you tell that person? And would you just basically stop them if you cared about them? You'd say, no, you're not going to do that.
Yeah, it's like that old line of Groucho Marxism about I wouldn't join any club that would have me as a member. The fact that you've been marked out for someone who is the right person to do that job maybe means you shouldn't be doing that job. Look, to be fair to Dana Bash, she did a pretty good job in that debate, the most famous debate in history now, on June 27th, when she did ask pretty straight questions of Joe Biden, which got him into his mess. And she did ask again. She had this is what was frustrating about last night. She had the right first question on several occasions. That very first question, the question to Tim Walz about his making stuff up, or his fabrications about his military and his other backgrounds, or asking her why she had stopped being opposed to stopped being opposed to fracking on some of the other issues. So this is the situation. Obviously, Kamala and Harris have prepared this one word, this simple response to that first question. But what matters then is the follow-up, where they're not prepared, and you push them harder on that. And she just didn't do that time and time and time again.
Well, right, because that wasn't the point. The point was to do debate prep, and let's get these answers that we formulated out there and see how the public reacts to them, so that we can use them or discard them and come up with new ones. So let's see if the public buys my values haven't changed as the global explanation for her 180s.
Yeah, look, the first question should have been, honestly, and I really thought she might go there, but I guess it was ruled out, should have been, look, Madam Vice President, you're the candidate for president. It's the first interview you've done as the candidate for president. Why do we have to have the vice presidential nominee here? Why can't we just have a one-on-one with you? I mean, that was, now as it happened, Tim Walz didn't get many saying those things. No. But he was clearly there, as a kind of relief. It was a little bit like a tag team, right? When in that professional wrestling, when someone's in the ring and supposedly getting a bit of a hammering, so you can release the pressure by turning to the other one, and that's what she did.
Were they holding hands?
The role Tim Walz played.
I don't think they held hands during this.
Yeah, well, Coach Walz, it's almost like they want to present him as, well, definitely this Midwestern everyman who's going to be sort of like the commonsensical, no nonsense, steady hand to make sure that everything is buttoned up a little bit.
Yeah, look, it's all part of this fiction. I mean, forgive me for self-referencing, but I wrote my column this week about just how deceptive the Democrats are. That convention we saw last week was just, classic, left-wing Democrats. They disguise themselves as mainstream, patriotic Americans who love the country and love its values and love what it stands for, and don't have any, really you can trust them because they're not going to do anything kind of radical or strange. And then they get into office and they do very radical progressive things. It happened with Obama. It happened with Joe Biden, and it will happen with Kamala Harris. And I think that Tim Walz, to me, is the perfect model of that. And again, I said in my column this week, he's the sort of absolute sort of poster child of this here he is, the coach Walls, the regular guy from the Midwest who looks after the team, and everybody loves him, and he's just the kind of guy who would clear snow from your driveway in the winter and all this kind of stuff. But he's actually, look at his record in Minnesota. He's got one of the most radical left-wing records of any state in the country, and that's the deception. That's the trick the Democrats are going to try and play. And you ask the question, will it work? Well, it's worked before, so it probably will work again.
We shall see. Gerard Baker, editor-at-large, Wall Street Journal, author of American Breakdown, Why We No Longer Trust Our Leaders and Institutions, and How We Can Rebuild Confidence. American Breakdown is the book by Gerard Baker. Gerard, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And he joined us on the Turnkey.pro answer line.
Listen to podcasts of Dan and Amy from the AM 560 mobile app. Download it today at 560theanswer.com/mobile.
Can you read this email for me?
Of course. Jeez, I wish they could do something for your eyesight.
Me too. But you heard what they said. There's nothing we can do.
When vision loss can't be corrected with glasses or surgery, and hope